Okay. So, hey, everybody, we are here at Warrior Leadership Training. I see a lot of you guys are on here, and I'm so glad you guys are here. We got Scott Duffy who is here, and I'm going to actually tell you a little bit about Scott Duffy and who he is and why you're on here, why you want to hear what he has to share. Scott Duffy's is a TV online host. He's a keynote speaker and a business growth expert. He began his career working for one of those best-selling authors, a.k.a. Tony Robbins, and went on to work for several media brands like CBS Sportsline, NBC Internet, Fox Sports, and then he founded Smart Charter, which is an online booking tool for private aviation, which he then got it acquired by none other than Richard Branson's Virgin Group. Mm-hmm. So he created a business and then monetized it and then sold it to Richard Branson. And it wasn't an easy thing. And I know you'll probably share a little bit about that, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right, cool. And then, of course, he is one of the top keynote speakers out there by Entrepreneur and Forbes. He spoke on every single channel and Fox News and CBS Radio, and he's also a co-host with Alan Taylor, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna get him on here too. You guys do Business and Burgers, and that is presented by Microsoft. Mm-hmm. So if you guys Google Business and Burgers, you're gonna find Scott Duffy and Alan Taylor, What else? You've done some special projects
the most important thing is I'm still trying to figure out how to pronounce this. Is it kombucha or kombucha?
We got the group. I don't know. There's some, but Joni.
I don't know. The other stuff doesn't matter. This is all I care about.
Kombucha.
Kombucha.
Do you make your own kombucha? Have you ever made your own?
No, I haven't. Is it hard to do?
I've never made your own. No, I haven't made it for a while, but my daughter and I used to make it all the time.
It's so good. What is it?
Weird stuff.
What do you know what it is? What
is it?
Yeah. Stuff. It's just a bunch of stuff.
Well,
healthy stuff.
Yeah, if I was to
fermented
explain the whole
stuff.
Process, you'd be like, oh my God.
Okay. So I don't want to know how to make a sausage then.
It's good stuff. It's just
You don't want to know. It's like asking what's a hot dog. You just don't want to know those things.
I just don't want to know? Okay, I will not ask. I will not ask. Okay. All right, I'm with it. All right, that's cool. That's cool. So what are we going to talk about, Ken? What do you want to talk about today?
Well, we already started talking about like leaders and, we talked about being early on time, is on time the standard for CEOs and business people and entrepreneurs, is because a lot of people feel like early is on time is late. And then if you're late, I don't even want to do business with you because my time is so valuable and so is the company.
Yeah.
I
think I just start here. Just get shit done. I mean, this is where, excuse me, but I mean, when we talk about being on time, being late, being all that kind of stuff, I think that, one of the biggest challenges that people have as entrepreneurs is they wait. We're talking about being late is they wait to get started because they think they need to have every resource, all the things that they need in place before jumping in. But if there's anything that I've learned working for people, and being around people like a Tony Robbins or a Richard Branson or a Howard Schultz from Starbucks or whoever it is, it's that what they all have is a vision. They know where it is that they want to go. And instead of waiting, what they do is they learn what it is they need and acquire those things just each and every step of the way. And so, the thing that the business, the late, whatever, let's just get started because life doesn't wait. So, if you have something that, it lives inside you, you have something that keeps you up late at night and gets you up early in the morning, don't wait, launch. You got to let that thing out. That's what I like to say. And so, yes, it is important if you want to be a leader, to be early or be on time. But more important, if you want to be an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter if you're having a good day or a bad day, because we all have them. The thing is to show up. And I was having this conversation with somebody recently. I think that sometimes we get so caught up in, how do I take action, or what do I do if things are not working out as planned. I think, again, it's just taking action, and it's understanding that in business, sometimes the purpose of being in business today is to be in business tomorrow. It's just about continuing to take those steps forward.
No, you're an entrepreneur, and you before you became an entrepreneur, you weren't into all this personal development and things. How did you get into personal development? How did you meet Tony Robbins, and then how did you sell a business to Sir Richard Branson?
Wow. Okay. Well, so let's see. I grew up in Los Angeles. So a little bit about me. I grew up in Los Angeles. I went to school at the University of San Diego. And I was one of those guys that just loved the whole college experience, right? So I started my first business as a freshman in college. I had a bunch of employees. I played college sports. I was into the fraternity thing. I just absolutely loved college until everything for me, it all changed in a heartbeat. And you see, what happened was, when I went to school in San Diego, we had this tradition. And the tradition was, and kind of all the schools around here did it, was after midterm exams in the fall and in the spring, everyone would jump in their cars and we would drive 9 hours south to San Felipe, Mexico. And everyone would just kind of like go crazy and party for a few days. It was crazy. Well, in my third year, my junior year, I happened to get done with all my tests early, and I was on my way down, and I was one of the first cars, and I was going to go set up. It was about 90 miles south of the border. And, if you've ever been down to Baja California, you'll know what I'm talking about. What happens is you see these 2-lane highways where you have one lane in each direction. And then it's like desert as far as you can see. Right. And for some reason, there's some points where the roads, these 2-lane roads, they actually rise up and there's this drop and just desert forever. Well, we were cruising along, going about 90 miles an hour, and a truck had gone off of the side of the road and tried to gun it to get back up. And we didn't see him and he didn't see us. And we smacked this guy head on, going like 90 miles an hour. And it was the worst day of my life. And the question I have for people is how many times in your life have you been going down a road? Maybe, doing everything right. Maybe in business, what that means is you have a great idea. You write a great plan. You build a super team. You execute flawlessly. And then something comes and it smacks you out of nowhere. Like maybe it's the economy. Maybe there's a shift in the industry, whatever it is. And you have to wipe it all out and start over. Every single thing you did up to that point, every call that you made, every PowerPoint that you created, every meeting you went, you had to throw out. And that is what happened to me. You see, the guys that we hit, I was, we were all knocked out. I had 2 brain hemorrhages. And, it took several hours before we were able to get help. And I thought that things couldn't get worse. But for me, it was actually recovering that was the harder part. You see, because I had dropped out of college. I couldn't read. I couldn't write. I couldn't watch television because everything made me sick. So I basically laid in bed most of the time, all day for a while. And one day, one of my college roommates came in, and he said, Scott, my dad thinks you should listen to this. And it was a motivational book on tape from a guy named Dennis Waitley. And I was like, cool. So I started listening to this thing all day, every day. And before you knew it, other people, I look back at this and I'm not even sure exactly how it happened, but other people started giving me these tapes. And before you knew it, I had this whole library of people like Dennis Waitley and Les Brown and Brian Tracy and Jim Rohn. And I listened to this stuff all day, every day. And I really don't even know how much I heard because my head used to hurt sometimes so much, but it all sunk in. And I remember when I got better, I made this commitment to myself that when I felt strong enough, I wanted to go back to school and work for one of these people who inspired me as an intern. And the first person I applied to intern for was Tony Robbins. I was like 20, I think he was 30. And instead of offering me an internship, I got this really cool job. And so I never graduated from college. I went to work for Robbins Research when I was a young guy, promoted other people as well. And I remember one day, like a year later, we were at this team lunch in Seattle. And I was sitting next to Tony, and I remember I said to him, I go, hey, Tony, I said, I don't know if you remember, like looking back how I got here. I said, I was one of those people having the time of my life. And then I got in this car accident down in Mexico, and everything got messed up. I started listening to these tapes. And I said, but what that did is it led me to you. And what led me to you then led me to all these amazing people. And what's really happened is it's opened up, it shifted my sense of possibility. And I said, and he put up his hand, and I'll never forget it. And he said this, he said, Scott, he said, in life, in business, you're going to have good days and bad days, but you don't know which is which until sometime way down the line, because you don't know what you'll make of the experience. And in my life and in my business, I've always found that to be true. So I did the training thing, and I did it for some time. And then eventually I just kind of burned out of it. And, just like all of us in life, we'll do something, we kind of really get into it. It might be exercise, might be this, might be that, might be whatever, it might be cheesecake. And then we burn out of it. And so I was in my early 20s, and I had just worked for this amazing guy, and I didn't know what I was going to do next. So I moved back to Los Angeles, and I was actually working as a bartender at a bar in Santa Monica called Chillers, and not really doing anything, totally lost. We've all been in there in our lives so many times. I know we all have. And I remember, so this is the internet, just to give you some perspective, the internet became commercial, meaning you could see pictures on the World Wide Web starting in October of 1994. 2 months later, I got a call from the same guy who gave me that tape in college, my old roommate. And he's like, Scott, what are you up to these days? And I said, well, I'm not really doing anything. And he said, well, cool, because we're going to start an internet business. And I said, what's an internet business? And he said, what does it matter? You just said you weren't doing anything. Let's just do it. So we did. We started an internet company, and everything was a complete disaster. I had no money to start. I was left with less. And but I got inspired, because what that did is, being around it at that time, I had a chance to get to see these guys at Stanford working on a project that became Yahoo. And these guys at Carnegie Mellon that were working on something called Alta Vista. And I was like, man, I really believe in whatever it is they're building. I want to be near the action, right? Because I think in life, we really have to position ourselves, particularly today with this fast and the rate of change, like as things move. So I'm like, I got to get to the Bay Area. But I knew nothing about technology. So what I did is I went on what I call the couch tour. And the couch tour is when you make a list of all your friends in that city, and the nights that you don't work, you take your tips and you cruise up to the Bay Area, and you just sleep on your friends' couches. And I did that for about 6 months, until eventually I ran out of friends' couches and nobody answered my phone and my phone calls. And then one night I was sleeping. I was in Foster City, in a dirt lot outside of a place called Oracle. It's all the buildings now. And it was awful. I was totally lost. I was totally broke. I couldn't figure it out. No one would give me a break. And I got a call from a family member. And the family member said to me, we don't understand what you're doing. They said, we have had a big business. We have been in an industry for over 50 years. We have a plan, and we think that you should quit what you're doing, come back to LA, and go to work in that business tomorrow. So I had to make a decision, and we all have those times in our lives where we have to make a decision. And whatever we do is going to take us in one of two completely different directions. The decision I made was to turn on the car and go home. So I drove home that night. I got home around 5:30 in the morning, and I went into my room, and here's what I did. I took everything that I had in my bedroom, and I shared a place with my sister. I took everything I had, and I went to a pawn shop in Santa Monica, and I pawned everything. And at the time, everything was a high school ring, a bracelet, that a girlfriend had given me in high school. I tried to pawn a basketball and a file cabinet. I had a Rolex I bought when I worked for Tony Robbins. I did everything. And I took the money, and I went and I paid back rent, and I paid people I owed. And that same day, I took what I had left, and I went back to San Francisco. I had $200. And the question is, what do we do when we're down to our last $200? And the answer for me is really simple. We buy pizza. Because I believe that if you buy pizza for like a company, somebody in that company is going to like pizza. So what I did is I went to a Domino's Pizza, and I worked out this deal, and I bought all these little pizzas. I took my resume and I like smashed it in the cheese as much as I could. And I delivered it to the places that I wanted to work. And back then, there were very few internet companies. And so it wasn't a lot, right? But what I figured that somebody would be hungry. I know salespeople, when they're hungry, they'll eat anything you give them. So I'm like, okay, cool. So somebody is going to have to actually pull my resume out of the pizza, and they're going to have to see me. And guess what? Somebody did. And his name is Bill Peck, and he is the father of internet advertising. Created it all, sold the first ads online, all that stuff. And he called me and he said, look, I don't know if I have a job for you, but if I don't, I promise I'll help you to find one. And it changed my life. And from there, I was really fortunate. I was one of the first guys on the startup team of a company called Quote.com. We were the first company to get permission to put stock quotes on the World Wide Web from the exchanges. And that company sold to Lycos for about $80+ million. I was on the early stage of the launch team for a company called Sportsline USA, which became CBS Sportsline, and today is CBSSports.com. On the launch team of Zoom.com, early kind of startup team of Zoom.com, which ended up being acquired by NBC to create NBC Internet, and then was on the team to launch FoxSports.com. So all of that experience came out of all of that pain back in the day. And I always remember when I think back at it, you know, we have good days, we have bad days, like Tony said, but you don't know which is which until sometime way down the line, because you don't know which will make the experience. And what that experience really taught me was a couple of things. Number one, we have got to be incredibly careful who we surround ourselves. Because here's the thing. First of all, just because somebody loves you does not mean that they know what's right for you or that they have the best advice for you. And that's a really important distinction. I learned that people that have limited visions of themselves can never have a larger vision of you. It's so important. I learned that the most important thing that you'll ever do in your life is manage your favorites on your cell phone, because we are no more, no less than the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And the simplest way to think about it is this. If I were to ask you to make a list of the 5 people you spend the most time with, and next to each name, write down what they earn, what you think they earn, add it all up, divide by 5. That is exactly, it's amazing. It's exactly what you earn. And you can apply that lesson to any area of your business. People who, you know, like sports hang around sports people, who are healthy hang around healthy people. It doesn't matter. And so I learned the importance. You know, what I learned is this. The difference between where you are today and where you want to be may be as simple as the last 5 people you dialed on your cell phone. It's that simple. So those are all things that I learned from that experience. Check your cell phone. Today, what I do is this. Today, you mentioned a show that I've had called Business and Burgers. We are a search for the best burger in America and a side of great business advice. And for 40 episodes, we have gone to one new city every month, and we go to the best brew houses and pubs and all that stuff. And while we're there, we interview today's top entrepreneurs, people like Damon John or Gary Vaynerchuk, or, you know, guys and gals like that. I interview people for Entrepreneur Magazine, and I'm just constantly interviewing people. And what I'm always looking for is, what is it? What is the difference that makes the difference in today's top performers? Because life is so, it's always changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I found is this: the number one thing, the single most important number one thing that top performers have in common today is this: it's a passion for learning. It's not even a passion. It's more like this crazy, like, just obsession with learning. And here's why. It used to be that life moved pretty doggone slow. And as people, things move relatively slow. It happened, like, change happened linearly. And what that meant is, as a business, as a person, as a business, we could set 10-year goals and 20-year goals. We could look outside our window. We could see our competition. And that's just the way it was. But today, life doesn't change linearly. It changes exponentially. Change just happens so doggone fast. And this is what the top performers know. I'll give you an example. 100 years ago, okay, so it was actually 101 years ago, in 1917, the average male in the U.S. lived to be 49 years old. 49 years old. I'm 47. That freaks me out, right? Maybe back then, all you had to do was be great at one thing, and that was enough because of your life expectancy, right? That's not the case today. We live twice as long. Other thing, if you take a look at last year's 2017's college graduating class, the top 10 jobs that those graduates wanted, that they applied for, didn't exist 10 years ago. And this is what these top performers know. And so what they're constantly looking for is, how do they stay ahead in terms of their learning so they can be flexible and adaptable? Because today, speed and flexibility is like gold. It is the one thing that separates the winners from the losers. And again, that's what these guys know. So if you like, I'm happy to share just a couple things that I've learned to help these folks have shared with me about kind of how to stay on top and launch great companies in today's world.
Let me look around. Does anybody want to know this information? Because I'm looking at everybody in the audience. They're all shaking their head yes. They're all smiling. Yeah, you definitely. They awesome. Want to hear this.
Awesome. And if there's anything, if there's, please stop me. Like, if there's anything that you guys want me to talk about, or questions or whatever, I'm happy to do whatever you like. So the number one lesson I've learned is this: it's to learn how to buy a rainforest. Number one, learn how to buy a rainforest. And here's what I mean. A few years ago, I had done a deal with the Virgin Group, and I was invited by Richard Branson and the group to his home on Necker Island. And I remember I was so excited to go there. I had always heard about this place. And when we got there, and it was time for dinner on the first night, they asked all of us to go down to the beach and get in these little boats. Because Richard didn't just own the island that we were staying on called Necker, but he had just bought the island right next door called Mosquito. Because I guess if you're going to own one island, you might as well own the one next door, right? Why not? So we get in these boats, pitch dark at night, we cruise to this island, and we go around the backside. And what they had done is he had set up, like, on this little lone strip of beach, these tiki torches and this amazing barbecue. So I go to grab my plate, look for a place to sit, and I see Richard, and he's sitting on the sand, and he's on the phone, and he's negotiating a deal, and he's so passionate. So when he got in, it seemed like everybody knew what he was trying to buy except for me. So I asked him, I said, Richard, when he got off, Richard, what is it that you're trying to buy? And he said this: the rainforest. And I said, the rainforest, which one? And he said, the Amazon. Because I guess if you buy a rainforest, you should probably buy the biggest one, right? And then I remember saying, and it was so surreal, I remember saying what I guess I thought everyone else was thinking, which is, that's impossible. The number one lesson I've learned being around people like a Richard Branson or Tony Robbins is never tell them anything is impossible, right? They do not believe in that whole concept. And I remember Richard, he looked me dead in the eyes and he said this. He said, if you want to learn how to buy a rainforest, I'm going to teach you how to do it. And he said, number one, where do we start? We always start with our why. Why is it that we're doing this thing? Because building anything great, whether it's building yourself in shape, it's building a company, it's working to build up the kid or family, whatever it is, building anything great is going to be hard. And as it relates to building a business, if you're not truly connected in why it is that you're doing this thing, when times get hard, it's just too easy to quit. So we all knew what Richard's why was. Richard's why was he wanted to stop deforestation, and he wanted to protect the indigenous animals in the rainforest. So that was his why. So then the question is, so how are you going to do it? And he started here. He said, if that is my goal, if that's my why, do I really have to purchase and own the rainforest, or could I just lease it? And for me, that was like this huge shift in thinking. And then he said, if I was going to lease it and you put me in the same room as a willing seller, do you think I could negotiate a deal? And I'm like, yeah, Richard, I bet on you. And he said, great. So here's number 3. And this is where most people get stuck. How are we going to finance it? And I remember all the people that were sitting around started to throw out names of these people that were super wealthy, that may have the same why, saying, what about this person or that? And Richard, he raised his hand. He said, no. He said, what if it didn't matter if you gave a dime or a dollar, like effectively crowdsourcing, buying the rainforest? And here's my point. In less than 5 minutes, buying the Amazon rainforest seemed easier than eating my bowl of soup. And what I learned in that moment from Richard Branson is this. What I learned in that moment is, if you have the right mindset, you have the right people, you put the right resources around you, you can achieve virtually anything that you dream. Which leads to point number 2. Where do you start? And you start here with one hammer and one nail. One hammer and one nail. And here's what I mean. Let's say I give you one hammer and one nail. Your job's simple. All you have to do is take that hammer, bring it back, and drive that nail into a piece of wood. Like, really nail that one business. Now, the odds are you may miss the first time, you may miss the second, but eventually I'm going to bet on you. I'm going to bet that you'll nail it. Okay, let's say I give you 2 hammers and 2 nails. You got a problem. Who's going to hold the nails? Now, let's say somebody's crazy enough to, think about it. You got to hold a hammer in both hands. You got to bring them both up at the same time, and you got to strike. And the odds are you're going to miss the first time, the second, the third time. You may never get it right. Let's say I give you 10 hammers and 10 nails. You get the point. You see, I think the biggest mistake that entrepreneurs make is they focus on too many things at once. And so what I say is this: don't focus on everything, focus on one thing. And it shouldn't be the hardest, it should be the simplest. So I call the minimum viable product or the minimum viable thing. Really nail that one thing, get feedback from the people that you're serving, and then focus on what's next. Does that make sense? Also, what I like to say is focus, on solving one problem for one person. So I'm in San Diego today, and I ran into somebody a couple of years ago who I used to work with back in the Robbins days. And this guy, I hadn't seen him in years. He was super excited. And I go, what's up? And he said, I just raised $2 million to start my new company. And I'm like, you what? He's like, on an idea, I raised $2 million. Somebody really believed. I'm like, I guess they did. And he said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to solve one problem for one person. And here's how I'm going to do it. I'm like, great. So high-fived him. Didn't see him again for a year. A year later, I run into him, also in San Diego. I'm like, hey, what's up? I said, how are things going? Here's what he says. He says, I'm actually on my way right now to my attorney's office. We're going to shut down the company. And I'm like, how is that possible? A year ago, you got $2 million. How is it? He said this. He said, look, he said, when I was getting started, I was solving one problem for one person. I was super focused. The day I got the money, here's what happened. What happened is this. Every day I went to the office, everybody had a great idea. He called it a shiny object. There's all these shiny balls around. And he said, and so what happened was we kept building and building and building and building, and we never got anything out. And then finally, we were almost out of cash. We released something, And check this out. We released they turned on the website, and 95% of the users used 5% of the site. Okay, so if you reverse engineer that, they wasted 95% of their time and their money building this thing. Okay, but here's the thing. Here's what's crazier. The 5% they used was his original idea. That's what they wanted. So what I say is this: don't focus on everything. Focus on one thing. Really nail it. Move to the next. How do you decide what comes next? You ask your customers. You ask the people that you serve. Ideally, you ask paying customers. You do those things. I'd say the third thing, gosh, there's so many. I'd say the third thing I'd say is to keep your eyes up. Always keep your eyes up and on the horizon. And here's what I mean by that. Just like that. What I mean by that is I have this really long bucket list, like this list of things I want to do before I kick the bucket. And every 3 to 6 months, I'm trying to do something. And I like to do it with people. So we put together these experiences. And a couple of years ago, I had a chance to learn how to drive race cars, which was on that list. But driving race cars, those lessons probably taught me more about business than anything else. Never expected it, and here's why. So when we started to drive, you get in your seat, and there's an instructor sitting next to you. And they sit in an angle, and they take their hand and they put it on the wheel. And it just sits there like it's there really lightly. So as you're driving, if you go off course, they can make these little corrections. You don't even notice that their hand is there. So we're in Vegas. We start to cruise. We're about 5-10 miles an hour. And the instructor says this: all I want you to do today is this one thing. Keep your eyes up and on the horizon. Focus on where it is that you want to go. Now, when you're going 5 miles an hour, you're going 10 miles an hour, 15, 50 miles an hour, that's not hard. But here's what happens in life. The faster life comes at us in business, the more problems that come at us. What happens is we tend to take our eyes that we're up and focused on our goal, and we tend to drop them and focus on what's right in front of us. And if you're driving a race car, what that means is your eyes literally can only see right over the edge of the hood of the car, right? If you're a skier, a snow skier, it's called looking over the tips of your skis. And so what happens is you see every bump, every pebble, every drop of water on the track. And as a result, you start to make all these really short, fast, quick, jerky adjustments. Now, 5 miles an hour, that doesn't mean anything. At 150 miles an hour, that leads to a crash, which is the best part of the day. So the best part of the day is learning how to crash. And the way they do it is you're cruising along, and when they see that you look like you're really comfortable, the person who's had their hand on the wheel takes the way they open their hand and they tug just a little bit, but they tug while you're driving. You feel really out of control. And the thing is, in life and in business, when we feel out of control, what's the first thing that we do? The first thing that we focus on is our fear. And when you're on a race car, that fear is the wall. So what happens is this. What happens is you're driving like this, and you're cruising along, and you feel that fear, and your eyes go to the wall. And what happens is when your eyes go to the wall, it pulls your head, which pulls your shoulder, which pulls your hand, and that literally turns you into the wall. So the instructor only has one job. It's after that minor tug, what they do is they take their hand, the same hand, and they put it really quickly up against your head. And what happens is as soon as you feel that pressure, your eyes roll back to the track where you want to go, which then pulls your head, pulls your shoulder, which pulls your hand, and that takes you out of a crash. See, what you learn is that when you keep your eyes up and you focus on your goal, you keep your eye up and on the horizon, what you're able to do is you're able to see and you're able to anticipate. And when you anticipate, you're able to make slower and real graceful movement. So what I always encourage, like the basics, the most simple things to get started are this. Learn how to buy a rainforest. Realize if you have the right mindset, the right people, you put the right resources around you, you literally can achieve anything that you dream. Where do you start? Not by trying to do everything at once, by focusing on one hammer and one nail. Really nail one thing and then focus on what's next. And finally, keep your eyes up and on the horizon. No matter what happens, stay focused on your goal so that you're able to make really slow and graceful movement and get to where it is that you want to go.
That's awesome. Wow. I'm like sitting here writing all these notes, and some of us I've heard before, but I'm still like, oh, I forgot that. Oh, this is good stuff. So, one of the questions, one of the people, one of the ladies here in the group, she wanted to know, when you had your car accident, you must have been in a lot of pain and depression and stuff like that. How'd you push through that? The first thing, and then what motivates you, Scott?
So, two questions. Thank you for asking. The first thing was what pushed me. I think it was through the pain when I was recovering. So it was a really, really, really hard time. I think that what helped me to get through it, I don't know if pushed me is the right word, because I just wanted to feel better. But I felt so bad that I don't even know that I wanted to feel better. I felt bad. But I was listening to these motivational books on tape. And I just think that it's like anything in life. Like whatever you ask, you attract. Whatever. I just happened to be in a room that was playing this positive stuff all the time. And it really happened. I didn't intend it. It really happened by accident. And so I think that for me, it was the constantly listening and constantly learning these positive messages helped open my sense up to what was possible. And the first thing that was possible was that I could get better. I mean, truthfully. The second thing that was possible was I might not even be able to get better, but like I could actually like improve and get really better. And then third is like, man, I could actually maybe go do something cool. I could go finish my college and go work for one of these guys or gals. So I think that that's kind of what pushed me through. What motivates me changes. I think it's probably the same for all of us. So I used to think when I was younger that there was like, I was supposed to like have one thing that I was supposed to do with my life. And like, there'd be one driving force behind me my whole life. I haven't found that. Maybe as a constant thing my whole life, but I'll give you an example. When I was writing my book Launch, I was really frustrated at one point, and I was really ready to throw it in. I was writing this book that I felt like I was doing it for other people. I felt like I was supposed to do it to break into kind of the training industry, whatever. I didn't enjoy the process at all, and I decided to cancel the contract and give the money back to the publisher. And that night, I got back home and I was talking to one of my daughters. And my daughters today are 8 and 9. They were probably 4 and 5 at the time. And I don't even remember what she said, but I remember I woke up the next morning and I thought to myself, I really want to write this book because I want my girls to see who their dad was. I want them to know these stories. And that became my motivation. And honest to goodness, the book just poured out of me. What had taken a year took a month. So I think it's different things at different times in our lives. And what I've done is I have taken the pressure off of myself of trying to find this one singular massive focus or thing that would drive me. And that's really helped me personally.
Okay. So I got a question for you. How do you sell a business to Sir Richard Branson?
Well, I think that it really doesn't matter who you're selling a business to. I've been around business startups, business sales. I've been around the venture capital community pretty much most of my career. And it all comes down to one thing. It all comes down to, you just got to solve a problem, solve one problem for one person. I'll tell you, Richard told me something one time. I said to him, my entire career up to that point, I had worked for companies that were first to market whatever they were doing, for a sports website, for a stock quote, whatever it was, first to market. So what happens is, as you're building the company, it's like you're flying a plane while you're trying to build it at the same time. It's really hard. And I said to him, you, on the other hand, you have like the totally opposite approach. I said, what you do is you go into the biggest industries with the biggest competitors with the most money to spend against you, and that's where you play. And I said, I just don't understand it. And he said, Scott, let me give you my recipe for success. He said, here's what I do. What I do is I find a big market. That's number one. He said, number two, it's a place or a category where people already have their wallets out and they're spending money. So I don't have to teach or convince anybody to spend anything. He said, third, I find one person that uses that product and I find out one problem they have. And if I solve that one problem for that one person in a big market, he said, it's $1 billion business. And he said, and that's why today I have $5 billion businesses. And then he looked at me and started to laugh at me and he said, maybe you should try that sometime. So I think that was just really cool advice. It's all about, you know, let me share a story. So I had an opportunity a few years ago to buy an email list. Okay, so I spoke on stage, I got off, and this person came up to me and they said, we've got this big list. It's got 15 million people on it, and we want you to help us to market it and start selling products through it. And I knew train.
You've got to be at the mission.
I'm in San Diego. That's the coaster. I'm in Cardiff right now.
Oh, so, you're in Cardiff. Okay.
So here's what happened. So what happened was I get my hands on this list. There's 15 million people on it. And I figure it really doesn't matter what it is that I try and sell. If I market to that many people, somebody's buying, right? So here's what I did. I partnered with somebody. I partnered with a friend of mine. He came up with this idea for this nutrition product that we were going to sell. This is like this supplement thing. So, by the way, if you ever tried to mail to 15 million people at once, I just don't think you can do it. It's just like this huge feat. So we broke the list into these parts, and it totaled 1 million people at all these places that we're mailing. We mailed one offer to all 1 million people, okay? Guess how many people bought? 0. We had 0 transactions, and we were shut down by almost every internet service provider within the first 10 minutes because so many people opted out or called us spam. So I'm like, okay, so I used to believe in life that if you wanted to make things happen, what you did is you said yes, and then you figured out how. What I've learned is you say yes, and then you figure out who knows how. So what I did is I said, who knows how to do this? Who would know how to take a 15 million person list and monetize it? And what I did is I got a hold of, I was introduced to a guy through my network who is the king data guy. He does it for Walmart and Target and all these places. And he looked at my list. He said, Scott, it's not the size of the list, it's the quality of the list. He said, what do we know about it? He said, because we have to sell one product, solve one problem for one person. Keep hearing the same thing over and over from people. So I said, well, I was approached after I got off stage, and the people who approached me own the largest Christian call center in the United States. And what that means is if you watch any of these televangelists like Joel Osteen or TD Jakes or any of these people, and they tell you to donate, or they tell you to buy tickets, or they tell you to buy a book, all those calls in the US go to the same place in the Northeast, and they private label the service. And in addition to selling, as part of their commission, they also get to co-own the data. So here's what happens. So what happens is my guy, he says, all right, so let's come up with a name. He said, what we have to do is create a target avatar. We're going to solve one problem for one person, a target avatar. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, let's start by giving the person you're solving the problem for a name. And he said, it's a Christian list. Why do we call this person Christian if it's a boy, or Christina if it's a girl? I said, let's call it Christina. He said, great. So now we've got Christina. Christina's our avatar. He said, how old is Christina? I said, I don't know. He said, well, let's take a look. He said, the biggest group of people on this list is 45 to 60. He said, let's say Christina's 45 to 60. What else do we know about her? He ran the 45 to 60-year-old Christinas through a program, and he found common characteristics. One of the most common was Christina. She was 45 to 60. She was an empty nester. So if she had kids, they were out of the house, but there were 3 people in, which meant that she was probably caretaking for a parent. She was a pet lover. She wasn't just a pet lover. She was a dog lover. She wasn't just a dog lover. She was a small dog lover. And we kept going and going and going. He taught me to come up with 25 characteristics about my target customer. And we did. And guess what? Out of 15 million people in that list, there were 180,000 Christinas that had 25 similar characteristics. And now we knew so much about Christina. I want to know everything. I want to know, where's Christina? Where does she live? Like, what is she interested in? What does she care about? What drives her to buy? And then we created an offer. And we sent the offer to Christina, and we could not stock our shelves fast enough, right? Because we solved one problem for one person. So, I just can't emphasize how important that is.
And that is great information. I know there's some people on here right now that own businesses that have products that, reach out and, they're so into their customers and making sure that they solve their problems, that they have a lot of people now following them because they help solve that problem. So this is a huge nugget, guys. If you're writing these notes down, that Scott's sharing, and all you got to do is help one person, because then there's another person that's just like them.
Yeah, and the problems are always changing. The person that you solve that problem for today, that problem may have transitioned or changed over time for that person, and a majority of that target avatar group. So it's very important to constantly be speaking to your target. Actually, speaking is the wrong word. To be conversing, back and forth with your target. To really care about your target, so that you're able to adapt with the market.
Awesome. Wow. We've gotten so many nuggets of information, and I love the stories that you share, because people can relate and they understand and go, all right, I'm not the only person that's been through this.
Dude, being an entrepreneur is tough. I can't tell you. I mean, the funny thing, the funny thing about it is, so it just so happens in my experience that I have worked for or been a part of all these big brands. So it sounds like, when you're reading that bio at the beginning, like everything sounds so neat and tidy, but the reality is it is so freaking hard. I've been on my ass so many times. I have slept in my car. I've done all that bullshit. I've had I've run out of cash. My wife has sold her ring in order to pay for. We have been through the highs and the lows and the ups and the downs. I'm represented by Damon John Shark Group for speaking, and I was talking to them one day and listening to Damon tell his story. I mean, Damon John, people don't realize this. Damon worked in Red Lobster for 8 years while he was starting FUBU. So he was working there in the day or the night and working on FUBU. He's like, dude, I had enough money to buy one hat. And then I sold one hat and I could buy a hat and a half. And he said, and then I could buy 3 hats and whatever. I was talking to Brian Smith, such a good friend of mine. Brian, the founder of UGG Boots. Brian Smith got a $15,000 loan to start UGG Boots. He bought 500 pairs. He had no money for storage. He put it all in his 1-bedroom apartment. Guess how many boots he sold in his first year? 33.
Yeah.
So 33 boots. That was it. 33 boots. Brian Smith, he was pedaling out of his car up and down the beach on the coast in Malibu. Yeah. And in fact, if you've ever heard of Teva sandals, so there's Teva sandals or UGG boots. So he started UGG at the same time that the guy who started Teva started that sandal company. And they used to save each other parking spots along the beach where all the surfers were in Santa Monica and Malibu, so they could sell to these guys and gals when they came out of the water, right? It took Brian 7 years before he took his first dollar out of the company, right? This stuff is really tough. And the only reason I throw all that stuff out is because, man, it's like we're all in this together. It's not easy. We all have highs and lows. We all have ups and downs. The thing is, the people who really freaking crush it are the people that learn how to repackage everything that happens in their mind and use it as something that helps them to move forward. You see, I think that our brains are like Google. I think whatever you ask Google, it's going to come up with 1 million freaking results. So if I ask Google after I have a bad day, why do I always have bad days? Why do I suck? Why do things continue to not work for me? Your Google brain will give you 1 million reasons why. It'll tell you why you suck. And then what that will do is lead you just into this endless loop where you start to ask more questions when Google has an answer. But if you reposition, you see, when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at change, right? And so if you ask yourself a different question, if you ask, what can I take from this experience to help empower me? What can I take from this experience to make sure it doesn't, what can I take from this experience to use next time so that I absolutely kill it and I have fun doing it and all that kind of stuff? Your Google brain will teach you how to do it. And if you want to know what I find the most similar between Damon and Tony and Richard and all these people is they do it naturally. And they do that naturally because they practice it all the time because they know how important it is. So I really encourage you to ask a better question, because if you ask a better question, you will get a better answer. And if you get a better answer, it will change the way you feel. And if you change the way you feel, it will change the way you behave. And if you change the way you behave, you will get a better result. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. Everybody's raising their hand. That's awesome. No,
Yeah.
and I appreciate it. It was cool because just a couple of weeks ago, we were both in San Diego with Damon John, and he shared a little bit of his story. So it's cool to hear it from you and him as well, the story about him selling his hat one at a time and growing that. Well, he worked at Red Lobster, and it was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But now, and the thing is he didn't lose focus. He just kept on going. And there was people who are like, why are you doing that? And why do you want to do that? And just negative Nancy's, he just stopped listening to them and said, you know what, I'm going to do this no matter what.
Yeah.
Now he crushed it.
Yeah. So, and he has this challenge. I just think that the bigger success, the bigger the success that you have, the more money that you make. More is more. More is more problems. More can be bigger headaches. But what happens is, so you have to have your mind right. You have to. What I found is people that make money and that hold on to it, or that make money, maybe lose it, they come back and they hold on to it. Is what happens is you have to have your mind in the position that is willing to take on more. You have to be constantly growing and building and expanding what you're capable of. What you're capable of processing. You're capable of, like, in order to be successful, be able to handle all of that success. There's the train again.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. So.
No. Did you want to continue, or was that it? Okay, cool. Well, we know. I know your time's valuable, and I know you want to get back to your girls, who I've got to meet at the baseball game and just had a tons of fun with. And I love watching your videos with them and them telling you how things are done and stuff like that. It's just awesome to watch that. But
can I tell you my favorite story about my girls today?
Sure. Yeah, of course.
So I learned. So my girls are 8 and 9 years old, and I learned so much from them. And one of them, I always joke. Her name is Lexi. She is amazing at making money. Like, she finds money everywhere, and so I love to tell the story. We were at Disney, and we walk in, and we just get through the gate, and Lexi finds a $20 bill. And she's like, Dad, check this out. I'm like, awesome. So we keep cruising through the day. We're on Main Street. She finds a $5 bill. I'm like, 2 in a day? That's amazing. Later in the day, she finds money. So finally, that night, we're on this ride, Big Thunder Mountain at Disneyland. And she sits down next to me in this roller coaster, and she reaches into the pocket in front of her, and she does this, and she pulls out this huge wad of money and change. And I said, Lexi, how is it that you're always able to find money? And she said, Dad, it's easy. It's just what I look for. And the question is, what are you looking for in your life? Where is your focus, right? Yeah. Whatever we focus on consistently, right? That's what we get in our lives. That's what she does. My older daughter, so I do this thing with my girls where once a year I do a father-daughter night, and we pick a theme, and we do it separately. So the first one I did was with my daughter Lily, and this movie Brave was out at the time, and there was a character named Merida. She's the main Disney character in this movie, and she's an archer. So Lily was really into wearing the princess thing and the arching and all that stuff. So I made this whole thing where after dinner, we went to this room at this hotel, and she got to pick where we went. And I had set up before we got, so she didn't know this, all these boxes to be like castles and stuff like that. And I put a target thing on the wall. And I just thought it would be fun, whatever. So we get behind, we're shooting this target. And I said, okay, Lily, you got to get behind the box. You got to get in the box so that they can't get you, right? And hit the target. And she'd start to shoot, and she'd miss, and she'd miss. And then she'd get out of the box, and she'd shoot. And she'd hit it. I go, no, Lily, you got to get in the box. Lily, get in the box, Lily. And she got all mad, and she threw down her arrows, and she goes, Dad, how am I ever going to be able to hit a target if I have to stay stuck in this box?
Ooh.
And I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, it's so true. Like the lessons you get from these, you know, they're everywhere. The lessons are everywhere. But you know where the magic is in life? The magic is taking the stuff that is the most messed up, the most effed up, the most screwed up, and figuring out how to package that in your mind is pure magic, is a gift, is something that you're going to learn from, is something that you are going to use to make you so fucking powerful. It's amazing. That's where the magic happens.
Wow. I'm kind of speechless right now. I think everybody else is. Thank you so much, Scott. I appreciate you sharing these nuggets. And before you go, because I know you want to get back to your girls, we have a thing called the Success Vault, which is kind of like the tub of love, but you know, I'm not into that tub of love. But I am into the Success Vault. So I was just going to see, is there something that you would like to donate into the Success Vault that somebody's going to win at the end of the year that can help them in their personal life, their business, or in their community to be a better leader?
Well, sure. What should we do? You name it. What would be the most valuable? How about a coaching session?
Okay. Coaching session with Scott?
A one-on-one coaching session?
One-on-one coaching session?
Yeah.
How many? All right, wait. Let me look. Let me see if anybody wants that. I'm looking. If you're liking that, doing the thumbs up, hands up. Look at. Yep. See all these people on the video. They're doing the. They look like they're milking cows upside down.
That's awesome.
So yeah, a one-on-one coaching session. If that's cool with you, Scott.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. So I'll put that down, and then of course we'll make arrangements to make that happen.
Good.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much. I feel so lucky to have been able to talk to you guys tonight. I really appreciate it.
No, it's our honor, and you know, I know everybody here would love to have you come back at a future date and share some more stories, share some more wisdom, because I know we only got a tip of the iceberg.
Awesome. Well, you guys have a great night. Okay.
You too. Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
All right.